The American Contemporary Ballet is based in Los Angeles. It was founded by choreographer Lincoln Jones and dancer Teresa Farrell to produce original contemporary classic ballets by Jones and to present masterworks that exemplify dance as a musical art form. The company performs over 60 shows each season, spanning a repertoire which includes works by George Balanchine, Fred Astaire, Lincoln Jones, and reconstructions of the seminal works of ballet's history. Our primary speaker today, Lincoln Jones, is the director of American Contemporary Ballet. He has choreographed national campaigns for Facebook, Apple, and Virgin Mobile. He has also spoken on ballet for the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation at Cambridge, among others, and has served on the jury of the Los Angeles Film Festival. He's a recipient of the Philanthropy Roundtable Courageous Leader Award, and later to show some movement for us is Hannah Barr. She's from Tampa, Florida. Hannah trained at Houston Ballet Academy and Atlanta Ballet. She was a trainee with the Next Generation Ballet and attended the Alvin Ailey BFA program with Fordham University. She danced as a member of Atlanta Ballet 2 and Oklahoma City's Ballet Studio Company. Please welcome to the stage first, Mr. Lincoln Jones.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Come here to give a talk on ballet, and look who shows up. Bunch of ladies. And you, sir. Thank you very much for coming. So since 2020, I've often found myself speaking at conferences, kind of like this one, where my fellow speakers are covering very serious topics. Things like preserving free speech or keeping activism out of medicine or education. Compared with these things, ballet, my field, can seem kind of frivolous. And even I often catch myself thinking this way. But let's consider it a little more deeply. I can only speak for sure about myself, but I think most of us, if not every one of us, experiences a kind of constant yearning in our souls. A kind of persistent substrate that makes us feel a little anxious and a little lost. And I think we're unclear what to do with that feeling. Now, these other serious topics, they can create anxiety too, and we definitely want to solve them. But I think we're well equipped to understand them, to quantify and categorize them, and to strategize solutions for them. In fact, I think we're energized by considering their remedies. But this other, more vague anxiety, I don't think we are well equipped to deal with in our society. I think we do all kinds of things to distract ourselves from it, or even to medicate it away. Now, we all have our varied fears and ordeals, but I think this particular one looms large, even if it's in the background. See, we think of ourselves as rational creatures, but while reason is a tool at our disposal, much more than rational creatures, I think we are aesthetic creatures. I think a lot of what we feel is influenced by what our environment looks like, sounds like, and smells like. We respond much more to the form of things than their content. We dream aesthetically. We remember most forcefully in images. Images that we assemble unconsciously and that are representations of our world. A kind of inner aesthetics that is with us day and night. And more often than not, the intuitions derived from our aesthetic experience, the sights, sounds, and forms of these things proves much more relevant to our survival and our ability to thrive. On the reality TV show Alone, contestants are sent into the wilderness to live totally alone and to try to last as long as they can. And while you might think that the challenges of finding food and shelter and protection from the elements and predators would prove the greatest challenges, contestants say the psychological strains of loneliness and silence often outweigh them. One particular contestant lasted longer than most of the others, 72 days in Patagonia. What they realized set her apart was that she didn't just find shelter and a source of food. She made a home and gave it human touches, crafting herself a chair and even making wind chimes. I believe a large reason for our substrate of anxiety and disorientation that many of us feel today is that we are highly, if not primarily, aesthetic creatures. But we have built our society as if that is not the case. It shows in our culture, in our education, in our arts funding, in our architecture, even in our art. We also underestimate dance. Again, on the surface, perhaps nothing could seem more frivolous, but if we look deeper, we may find that it is quite fundamental. We all gravitate towards our own interests, and there is probably no human being that doesn't feel an urge to move when they hear music that they love. Let's consider that for a moment. There's this thing that all human beings share for all their lives. It's actually quite mysterious. You hear music, and it produces, from where we don't know, a compulsion to move, which you do in a way that is totally unique to you. If you do it, it creates happiness, joy, and maybe an even more significant and less definable feeling. If one really follows that feeling, if one really lets themselves go, it can produce ecstasy. Wait, what? So there is this deeply mysterious thing that all humans share through all their lives. It wells up inside them spontaneously in response to something else humans make, music, and the more they give into it, the more ecstatic they become, and when they do it together, it amplifies that feeling even more. It reinforces the good in human relations, and there's nothing else in human experience quite like this. And we mostly ignore it. More than that, we're usually afraid to do it. Seems like something we should pay attention to. We are largely a danceless society. Other societies from time immemorial have had dance as a central, highly important part of their culture. Not just watching it, but doing it. It was a central part of the social fabric for millennia. It was a release for the anxieties and stresses. It was a celebration. It was a joy and a social glue. It formed a vital part, a thrilling part of how they interacted with each other. But not us. I'm sure we'll be fine, though. Now, dance can never be held down entirely. But the ways we see it manifesting in our culture are often distorted and provide nothing of what it could give us in terms of real value. We see it as a form of competition on game shows. We see it as a form of sexual or virtuosic display on social media. But this is not what dance is. So what is it? Dance is letting the feeling produced by the music take over your body. It is allowing your body to move ahead of the censorship of your conscious mind. In society, we have a feeling, an impetus to act, and we check it. Society is subsuming one's behavior to a set of rules, and with good reason. But that isn't how the soul functions. We need release. Your soul needs to speak without being checked. It is you, and you can be told to sit and be quiet for a while, but not forever, not without consequences. And you shouldn't, because your soul is shimmering, it is magical, and it is part of your genius. That is dancing. And watching dance, that is one of the most vivid and three-dimensional ways we have of seeing someone's soul in real time. Dancing together, that is one of the most spectacular ways our souls can touch. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about getting on a dance floor to a song that you're ambivalent about and bending your knees in an approximation of the rhythm while you mostly worry about what everyone else thinks of what you look like. If there's an opposite to dancing, that's probably it. Many, if not most of us, I think have forgotten how to dance. And with it, we've lost one of the greatest assets and joys available to us as humans and as a society. We must dance again. Now, given where we are today at this conference, let's consider education. The Greeks believed that physical education was as important as the education of the mind. And this says something for a society that produced some of the greatest philosophical and artistic treasures in history. In the Politics, Aristotle said the education of the body should come before the education of the mind. And Plato warned us not to exercise the body without the soul, nor the soul without the body. But while the Greeks were mostly concerned with the balance between physical and intellectual education, and thought the mind could not function well without a healthy body, perhaps physical education has more to do with the enrichment of the soul than just providing the mind a proper vessel. We can learn through information coming to our eyes and ears, for sure, but is physical, visceral experience any less informative? Is the soul, in fact, perhaps even primarily taught by the body? What does it do to us if we learn to stand like this versus like this? How does it change us to learn to navigate our environments with grace and refinement versus obtuseness? How does it change us to become aware of the sensation and movement in every joint in our body and to energize it versus leaving our body an unconscious burden? Could we, in fact, even understand the concepts of physics without the physical, in the same way we could not conceive of color being blind? And how much more of an experience of the physical world is available to us if we go beyond what comes to us passively? When it comes to physical education, there is no more sophisticated one available than ballet. I began ballet late. When I was 19, I had run track, played basketball, and water polo. None of those prepared me for the scope and complexity of ballet, which required me to become conscious of and train every part of my body with a degree of specificity that I had never conceived of before. But that's the least of it. Ballet trains nobility. And I mean that quite literally. Much of ballet was developed to train the nobility of Europe. But more importantly, it trains the nobility of the soul. And back then, they didn't really see a difference. In the 15th century, if you moved awkwardly, they thought something was wrong with your soul. And if we think back to my posture example, they may not be entirely wrong. How does it feel to be here? How does it feel? What can your soul experience here? What does your soul say to others there? How does it make others feel there? From my experience, as human beings on earth, our bodies and souls are inextricably linked, if not one and the same. And if we want the most for our soul, we must approach it through the mind and the body. Ballet trains nobility. Ballet is a science of grace in physical movement. Through experiencing, practicing grace in our physical existence, we can reinforce it in our souls. It is hard to be gracious in deed and not in mind. Plato again. More than anything else, rhythm and harmony find their way to the inmost soul and take the strongest hold upon it, bringing with them and imparting grace. Our society also underestimates beauty. Let's go to the classical authors again. Plato believed that knowing the beautiful teaches us to know the good. Plotinus believed that in beauty, the soul sees its own nature and rises toward it. And of course, these convictions aren't just limited to the Greeks and Romans. Goethe said that beauty is a manifestation of secret natural laws which otherwise would have been hidden to us forever. The famed physicist Richard Feynman thought that in physics, you could recognize truth, even in science, by its beauty. And of course, Keats, Beauty is truth, and truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. The first time I walked into a ballet studio, I found a satisfaction to my own anxiety and yearning. All around me, finally, I saw a discipline dedicated to deep beauty, and I saw it in moving physical reality. And I'd like to talk about ballet for a moment as distinct from dance. How does ballet differ from dancing? It is dance, to be sure, but it is made to epitomize dance so that you can experience it distilled. When done right, it is so powerful that the visceral experience of dance, the visceral experience of beauty, the learning of truth and beauty can be had just by watching. The ballet dancer, in other words, attempts to make her body a perfect instrument of the soul. And in doing this, she actually risks losing the ability to dance altogether. Many do. I'll explain what I mean. The path to a high level of ballet is in some ways the opposite of the path to dancing. Dance is spontaneous, instinctual, utterly unself-conscious. Ballet, on the other hand, requires a decade of the most highly conscious, highly self-conscious, highly self-critical preparation. After going through that without proper guidance, a ballet dancer might never actually dance. That is, never be able to let go and let the music move them again on stage. But she has to take that risk because it is in this meeting of the most self-aware preparation and the most unself-conscious execution that the chemical reaction occurs. It is a mirror of our souls. It is so very rare, but when it happens, there are few experiences that are as spine-tingling and as soul-altering to witness. Before I conclude today, I'd like to show you just one small visual example of how ballet creates grace and beauty through this highly self-aware practice. I'm going to invite our dancer, Hannah Barr, onto the stage, and I'm going to need a male volunteer. Would you come up here on stage, sir? I choose the guys because there's a far less chance that they've taken ballet. Have you, sir? Okay, come on up.
So if I run off,
I need you for 30 seconds. All right. What's your name?
David.
David. Okay. David, I would like you to stand right where you're standing.
Okay.
Hannah, do an arabesque à terre for me. Okay, David. Would you? Yes. Even face the same way. Face me. Okay. We're going to try. So for symmetry here, let's face this way. Yep. And go ahead. Okay. So immediately we can see there's a difference, right? But on the surface, is there? Could you try to take the pose for one more moment? His right hand is extended to the front, his left is the back, just like Hannah. He's standing on his right leg, his left is to the back. They're facing the same direction. So what is accounting for this difference? David, thank you very much. We're going to look at what's accounting for this difference. What Hannah has done is trained her body to energize every single joint, every single limb, every single part in a way that counteracts the force of gravity and the forces of tension to create something of grace. Let me show you. Her toe here would like to unpoint, but she's keeping it pointed. Her weight would like to rest on this back foot like it was in David's, but she can lift it up. Go ahead and lift up your leg. Set it down. Her heel would like to come up like this, but she's bringing it forward. Her leg would like to turn in, but she's keeping it open. The effort in doing that would like to bend this knee, but she's keeping it straight. She's turning this leg out to show a more graceful line, and that would like to turn her whole body in this direction, but she's turning her ribs back to where she's facing. In this foot, it would like to roll in this way, and it would like to turn in like this, but she's keeping it open. This knee would also like to soften, but she's keeping it straight. This leg would like to turn in up here, but she's keeping it open. In doing this, her stomach would like to come out, You can't really see her stomach either way, but I promise. Her hips, with this back leg being to the back, would like to go this direction, but she's pulling to keep them up here. The effort of doing that makes her ribs want to pop out this way, but she's closing them in, which keeps her center tied together. Her arm being held out like this wants to bring her shoulder up, but she's keeping it down. In doing that, it makes her elbow want to sink, but she's rotating it up. The strain of that would make her hands like to stress out, but she's keeping them soft and gracious. Her head would like to come forward, but she's keeping it back. On this side, the same thing. Her shoulder coming down once makes the elbow want to sink, but she's keeping it up, and her back strong. And all this effort would like to make her lips purse and her eyebrows go up, which you often see in ballet, but she's keeping them relaxed. Thank you very much, Hannah. You can take a seat for a moment. So what essentially she's doing is bringing life, intention to her entire body. And that's just the very beginning. That's just one pose, standing still. But it gives you a taste of what she's injecting her body with in order to make it respond exactly as she wants. And ultimately, she doesn't have to think about that. Her body will automatically take that position. So that when she hears music, her entire body can resonate. It can all take an intentional form versus us, where we might respond in the music, but it's not going to translate outward in the same way. Now, I assume most of you here are involved in classical education in some way. I want to assure you that if you introduce ballet into your curriculum, or champion it so others do, you will change lives and you will change souls forever. Dance is part of everyone, and it's for everyone, and I am always moved by seeing how many young girls are drawn to the image of a ballerina. I'm reminded again of Plotinus, saying that in beauty, the soul sees its own nature and rises toward it. These young girls see a beautiful creature up on stage, every part of her body full of life, her chin and chest lifted, her eyes focused up and into the distance, arms raised proudly overhead, and instinctively, they imitate it. But for some, given the opportunity to know ballet, it will become an obsession that goes beyond everything else. I look at every dancer in my company, and I'm moved by the risks that they had to take, that they continually take, the obstacles they had to overcome, the fears they had to face to be where they are. And that is one of the most beautiful things in and of itself. Some of those young girls and boys will come through your classroom. And if you can provide them not just with the opportunity to do it, but to understand the depth and gravity of a life spent in pursuit of beauty, you will give them the tools to succeed at it. Today, many young students are passing through our schools without ever knowing this art. Imagine finding them all, because, and this is what I really want you to take home with you, they will go on to create a beauty that otherwise would not and will never exist. You see, in ballet, you are not achieving something quantifiable. You are not scoring more goals than the last person or running faster than they did. The soul is unique, and the dancer is an amplification of the soul. She achieves a universal beauty, to be sure, but also she is an utterly unique instance of it. By finding her and giving her this opportunity, you are giving the world something otherwise it would never have had. Imagine our world without the rose, without the orchid, without the emerald. If ballet becomes a part of our schools, the aesthetic world we will live in the very near future, remember it only takes about 10 years to train a dancer, will be so much more. And every person who sees them dance will be forever changed. But I'm not going to finish on ballet today. I'm going to finish on just dancing. We are so accustomed in our culture to doing something for some extraneous benefit. We work out to look good or to feel good. We educate ourselves in order to have a good career. We eat well to live long. These are not bad things. But we are not as used to doing things for their own sake. Dancing, as you can see, has immeasurable benefits, but none of them so good as dancing. And again, I'm referring to real dancing, not the self-conscious try to look good enough not to be embarrassed thing a lot of us do. I mean getting on a dance floor to music you love, becoming fully absorbed in the feeling it gives you and letting it take over. letting your body get ahead of your brain until you are totally unaware of what you will do next, and you're on that plane that you can't get to any other way. If you've never done it, or haven't done it in a long time, you are missing out on one of the greatest reasons to be human. If there is a magic pill to happiness in our world, this is it. And it is learnable. It is not difficult. It takes a little risk, sure, but the reward is immediate. And if it still scares you, ask me, I'll teach you. You know, Carol McNamara and I figured out too late that we could probably have enough space in this room for a performance. But what I really thought we should do, rather than a performance, was have a dance. So I think that's what we should do next year. Yeah. You hear that, Carol?
I am. I'm right here.
Okay, good. So as many benefits as it has, dancing is the reason unto itself. And my final message to you is dance, obviously. And as Dostoevsky said, beauty will save the world. Thank you.